Please welcome writer-director Potsy Ponciroli and Tim Blake Nelson. Welcome, welcome. Actually, I want to start with Tim. Your performance is incredible, and and you go from, I mean, there's such a journey in your character and a transformation, and the beats where he changes, I'm not aware of them, and the question is, was it hard to modulate the slow transition that this character undergoes?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't have been able to do this performance without this guy right here. And so I always, whatever the performance is, he trusted me to work in his film. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it surprised me in terms of the playing of it. Initially I thought of this character as somebody who is unmasked through the narrative trajectory of Potsy's movie. But as we were working on it, I came to understand that it was more of an emergence of a true self. Getting to experience how that surprised me even as we were working on the movie. And I say this even though we were shooting out of order, which of course we were, because that's what you do. It still did happen. So it was more of an emergence than an unmasking is what I ultimately learned. And it was just really exciting to get to do that in Potsy's movie.
Potsy, when I introduced the film, I told him that even in the action sequence, like the last duel, the dinner sequence where he brings out the gun, that through the action, there's dialogue, and what I said was the character is revealed in the actions in your movie, and can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think now that everybody's seen it, there's no spoilers. So getting into the character and Billy the Kid of it, it was really. We did a lot of research on who Billy the Kid was and how, he loved to toy with people. He loved to, the Pat Garrett book on Billy the Kid revealed a ton of great gems. But it was, his whole life was about riding that line of danger and really messing with people and living on the edge. And I think for Henry, that's something he's stowed away for so long that when at the dinner scene in general, like, laying that gun on the table and kind of taunting Curry is he going to pick it up? Is he going to, I'm going to turn my back to him and go up to the thing, and just to keep that tension. And it's almost like a piece of him was coming back out of, if he does go for it, like, gives me an excuse to like open that up again. So I think part of him deep down missed that, but he's done everything he can to keep that away from his current life and to keep his son sheltered for what he could possibly be if he's going to follow in his dad's footsteps. So I think it was fun to play with that. It was a hard role, but it was fun to play with that, kind of those two lines of that. So.
And Tim, following my previous question and what he chimed in just now is like for example the last gunfight that we just saw, you reveal yourself as you're shooting him, and then you hide. I don't recall seeing a gunfight like that last scene where you expose yourself to the fighter, to Steven, and then you hide and then you shoot. Can you talk about that aspect?
Yeah, but I'd be quite unfair to Potsy to take credit for any of that. He choreographed the gunfight, and so much credit belongs to just superb direction on Potsy's part. We both really loved the gunfight in Open Range.
Kevin Costner.
Yeah. And Potsy can speak specifically to that. But what I was really trying to do in that gunfight, which again was completely designed by Potsy, was to play every moment truthfully. I owe some of that to a lot of the prep I did to play this part, and being responsible to the fact that he'd been wounded and a lot of other stuff that's boring actor bullshit. But really, the credit for that gunfight, which is so exquisitely choreographed, belongs to this man right here.
Yeah, go ahead, Potsy.
I think that, going into it, we knew that we wanted to put emphasis on the power of one bullet, and how, when you load a gun, you have 6 shots and every shot counts. And there were a lot more misses than I think a lot of movies and history would tell you. It's like you would aim and those guns weren't the most accurate thing. So, and taking the time to reload, and that puts you in danger because you're reloading, you're no longer firing. So it's almost like you have to find a place to retreat to reload so that you can come back out. And that, that was the thing between you and death. So it's kind of, we wanted to show that the power of what each bullet is doing. So I think, I'm pretty sure there's not a single 7th shot in the whole movie, luckily. So
at the heart of this movie, and the part that I was so emotionally involved, is the father and son dynamic. The fact that this father is caught in between the idea of either I'm going to protect this child or I'm going to expose him. When was that all along part of the script?
The script kind of, it evolved, like all scripts do, but it started off as a story called Old Dan, and then the fictional character was added, it became Old Henry. And so, but to give him some, because you don't really care about a ex-murderer that has hidden his thing, unless he has somebody he has to correct that behavior. So giving him a son, I have 2 daughters, Tim has 3 sons, and it's, you do your best to kind of shield them from your mistakes of, and I think every parent does that. And it's, you try to overly prevent them from making mistakes, but they're gonna do them, no matter how well you raise them. And so it's kind of, it's an endless game of trying to stop that. So, and Tim can speak to that more, because I think that was a big piece that you related to, was the father-son story.
Yeah, I it was a funny way this movie came to me. I was cooking dinner for 2 of my 3 boys, because one was already in college, and this script came to me from my agent over email while I was, I don't know, putting some game hens in the oven or something weirdly quotidian like that. And it said, "You've been offered the part of Henry in Old Henry." And I thought, well, it happened. I've been offered a codger. That's where I am now. And then I read this wonderful script, and I really did connect to that dichotomy that exists in parenthood between exposing your kids to the world out there or protecting them from it. And it really did connect with me. And then finally, I have an oldest son named Henry. And so I was pretty much sold at the outset. But then I met Potsy, and that was it.
Following up on that idea of father and son, and what we were talking about earlier about action and dialogue happening at the same time, the scene where you know the big fight and you're protecting your son, but at the same time you're teaching him how to be a gunfighter. You know, can you talk about that dichotomy of, you know, you have the action sequence, at the same time you're also interacting with your son, protecting him?
Yeah, you know, so much of life, but in particular, once you become a parent, that's your whole life. Even when you're not parenting, it's your whole life. And so much of it is improvisatory. And there's never enough time in those moments to impart wisdom that's probably more essential than any wisdom you can impart when there is time. That's just the tragic irony of it, isn't it? And I loved how this movie presented these dire moments in which it was more important than perhaps any preceding moment to impart wisdom to the kid. And so it's a very smart question, and I guess what I love about acting is getting to rehearse the moments of life. And it was wonderful to experience that opposite this, you know, an actor who was looking at me off when we weren't on camera as this grizzled veteran, while he was starting out on his career and in a relationship on screen that mirrored that. And it all clicked in, you know, one of those rare ways that you hope can happen. And it did on this movie.
Potsy, there's so much that characters are hiding and revealing, and, you know, 2/3 into the movie, there's the big reveal for us about the historical aspect of our main character. Was that all along that sort of big reveal?
Yeah, so, you know, once we put the historical, once that was, you know, went from a story called Old Dan to Old Henry, it was how do you pull off that reveal in a way that's, you know, you gotta have it timed right, you need to, and it needs to come across not in a cheesy way. And I do give Scott Hayes, who played Curry, he gets all the credit, because when we started filming that scene, and just after the first take, I watched him, and the way he did it in his breath and his eyes and he had that moment, and it felt so real. I was watching him, and I was like, oh yeah, I believe you. Like, you just, you know, it's all coming together. So even in the edit, you know, every time that scene would come up, I'd get chills and go, oh, it worked. Thank God for Scott Hayes. So,
but even, I mean, to your credit as both a writer and as a director, is that even without the reveal, the film, we're engaged and it works. Without it, when you were constructing and directing, were you conscious of the fact that this film needs to stand on its feet even without the reveal?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that's always a big piece of it, and it's, you know, yes, I think it needed to stand on its feet, because at the end of the day, it is a story of who do you trust in your home, and it's a father and son story, and so I think those storylines carry through. But, you know, the reveal, it did worry me from the beginning of, can we keep it a secret? Can we reveal just enough that, you know, some true historian people will get it, but the majority of people are going to not see it coming, and it's going to be an amazing moment. And so I think trying to give you just enough throughout was a hard line to hit, and but also not giving you too little that when the reveal happens, you're like, well, where'd this come from? So it was definitely a hard line to skate.
And Tim, how much, I mean, I think you mentioned that you did a lot of preparation for this. Can you talk about that? You move in a way that I've never seen you move. In your previous performances is very physical. Even the way your gunplay is something very unique we've never seen before. Can you talk about your physical preparation?
I just, mostly I wish I could go back and redo my whole career, and I've just learned so much about how to act in movies. I think there's a director here, Andy Davis, with whom I did the movie Holes. And I've learned so much from directors like Andy and so many of the actors with whom I've worked, and I feel like I'm really just beginning to understand how much needs to go into a performance. Thanks to people like Andy and the actors with whom I've worked over the years, and now Potsy, and I had a long time to prepare for this role because of COVID, almost a year. And I just approach the work differently now, with so much more patience, and without the need to make decisions early on to make me feel like I've got a handle on a character and I don't need to be afraid that I'm going to fail. And so this process allowed for a good 5 months of working through the script with Potsy, developing not only a collaborative relationship, but a real friendship with him, which served us so well on set. But also just delving into who this guy was and allowing him to come to me and not making decisions too early that would obviate or eliminate possibilities that could come if I just waited. And so living with the history of the guy, living with the photograph, the one photograph of the guy, and then spending, the second half, the next several months, working on the physical nature of him and learning the part, and then getting to set 3 weeks early and training every day and just doing the kind of work that a part like this asks you to do, and making the sort of commitment that a script like this asks of you, and also not doing it in a selfless way, but rather because there's nothing better than to take advantage of that kind of opportunity. And luckily, I was working with a director and producers who, again, were patient with that process, and the awful virus giving us another month or two to allow that to happen. So I just feel incredibly blessed to have gotten to do all the work to bring this character to life for my director.
And Potsy, I love the look of the film. Can you talk about your take on it? I love the way you shoot the outdoors, and once we're inside the cabin, the angles, the composition is very unique. Can you talk about?
Yeah, the story was based on the location. I found the location, and that's what kind of drummed up the story. So being out there and dreaming up a story is one thing, but then when you get in there with the DP, and John Matashek was our DP, insanely talented. Once we got in there and we started looking at, the angles, the ceiling was only 6 feet tall, in some of the rooms, and, one room I think was...
That's why they cast a shrimp.
That's why we cast it. But, once you get in there and there's camera and I realized that the porch was on the back of the house, so we actually had to knock down a couple old barns and create a front porch on the back. And the room that was going to be the living room was now 8x8, and so in getting in there, it made sense to shoot room to room. And it actually, once we started, Matashek and I started like kind of prepping all that out, it turned into the inside really feeling safe and close, and then the outside scenes are all very wide and big and like a Western should be. So I think the location just really lent itself to the story from the birth of it. So,
And the simplicity of it all, was that always your original intention? The fact that, we have this piece of land, this cabin, and this good and evil fight in the middle of it, it's just very, simple, but like poignant.
The idea was to write a story that we knew we could fund and create ourselves. So not having a Western town, not having, none of the horse, you're never traveling with the horses as they're riding. Everything's a walk up and stop. So, it really was, there is one scene where the horse rides across, but we don't go with him. So it was very, from the beginning, the idea was to create something I knew we could go fund and film and actually finish. So, it was a small film, from the first.
But it still has this mythical Western scope to it, and at the same time very gritty. When you were creating it, that's the way you envision it?
Yeah, once we started scouting and got out there, Matashek and I would send each other, movies that we were trying to reference tone and scope and things. And so I think some of the ones that we really were drawn to were Hostiles and Assassination of Jesse James, and so those just had a pace and a stillness to them that I don't know the location lent itself to. So, it was, but we wanted to. There was a moment where when Tim got to town and Matashek and I had kind of scouted out all of our locations, and they were all within, I'd say 300 or 400 yards from the main house. Everything we shot, so our base camp stayed the whole time. So. There was a moment though where, kind of walked Tim through all the scenes inside, all the scenes outside, and then brought him up to the ridge. And I was like, here's where you're going to look down on Curry, who's down in this creek. And I think that was the moment Tim was like, he's like, oh, you're really going to do this? This is going to be done right. And I was like, oh yes, I won Tim over. But I think
You had already won me over.
But it was in the scope of it that, in showing the distance and the size of the outside and trying to really play into that Western trope of the big wide landscape, that was always very important to it. So.
And just out of curiosity, the final shootout between him and Steven Dorff, how long did it take to shoot that sequence?
We shot in the middle of winter, so days were really, really short, and then COVID ate up the first hour of every day. So this was the final day of shooting. I had just rewritten that scene 2 days before because Tim was supposed to drown Curry or catch him in the creek, but the creek had E. coli in it, so had to rewrite that scene. So I show.
Okay, COVID and E. coli.
So I show up to set. Nobody knew what that scene was yet. I was like, "We have 3 hours to shoot this. You got to follow me, please." And so we got it done. And the final shootout in the woods we shot in about 2.5, 3 hours. And it was a lot of yanking people by the arm and showing them where to go. But
So one of the most bravura pieces of directing I've ever experienced. It was great, and so completely trusting of Potsy, and just did what he said. It was great. It was such a wonderful lesson in what filmmaking can be when there are certain exigencies.
So how was the original ending of that sequence with the river gonna
the original
be?
ending was they got to the woods, they ran out of bullets, and it turned into a really big physical battle. So just Tim and Steven Dorff fist to fist battling, and then it stumbles into the river, and Tim drowns him. We see in the 30-degree weather. Stephen Dorff floating face down in the creek. But that didn't work out that way. So,
And are you able to see what you wanted and then what's now on the screen? And are you able to realize that this is much better?
as soon as we were doing this, I was like, this is going to work. And when we're going through the edit, there's not a single extra piece of film that we could have possibly cut into that scene. I actually had to cut there was 2 more gunshots that he was going to do, but we ran out of time. So there's literally everything we shot that day is in the film. And then we ran up and shot the final scene. So it was, we shot in 21 days. So it was, the budget was restrictive, and we got the most out of it. So.
And I have to ask you the story about Rio Bravo. The moment where he hands the gun to Curry he's reenacting John Wayne and Rio Bravo. You tell the audience.
Oh, I think when you do a genre movie, and you're the only one who's picked up on this, so I just
I'm a big John Ford fan. So.
I think that when you do a genre movie, it's any nod to great moments within that genre. I don't think they're meta moments because I'm not so enchanted by that word or by that notion. But I think that we're part of a continuum, and an understanding of film history is essential. And it's part of the beauty of what we get to do. And so I said to Potsy, when I hand him the gun,
I'm going to show off my gun skills, is what you said.
No, that's not what I said. We had decided Buster Scruggs is not a part of this reality. So there's going to be no flash. But I said, there's a moment in Rio Bravo in which John Wayne has to hand over his gun to the constabulary. And I said, I want to quote that. And Potsy said, absolutely. And so we did it. Because I love when genre movies do that. I love when movies do that. And I'm an acolyte and a disciple and a follower, whatever word you want to use, of the Coen brothers. And that's what their movies are all about. I think those moments are the epitome of they're homage, but they're also generosity. They're generosity for the film goer who will notice it, and they're also a way of saying thank you to those who preceded us. And I'm grateful that Potsy said, yeah, let's do that.
Well, I think there was a few moments where we would almost have to check ourselves and say, is this too much of a silliness, or are we still in the world? And one of those was we went out there on a Saturday to practice the moment on the porch where, he fires the shots and dives through the window. Originally, he wasn't going to dive through the window. Fires some shots and he dives back through the door. And I'm standing down there, and our stunt coordinator's standing down there, and Tim's like, I should just dive through the window, and kind of said it jokingly. And I was like, you should dive through the window. And he's like, you think that's not too much? I'm like, that's amazing. He's like, I'll do it. I'm like, let's do it. So we made the fake
It's the reverse of Eli Wallach's entry moment in Good, the Bad, and the Ugly when he comes through the window with the turkey bone.
Right. So it was, it's moments like that, though, that are kind of born out of just, you in every Western, somebody goes through a window, but not every, but it's one of those moments to play with and really have fun with. And
We go to movies because we love movies, and when in the right ways and in responsible ways and in truly venerating, generous ways, you can thank those who preceded you. I think it's great, and it's wonderful for everyone.
Yeah. Last question, Tim. We've seen you in so many movies in supporting roles, Buster Scruggs. You mentioned Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Those were very physical and big performances. This character is all about containing things, repression. Was that difficult for you?
You would think, but no. I hunger for that sort of opportunity. And I don't hunger for it because I got out of drama school and said I want to play contained roles. It's more because mostly I've been asked to play outlandish characters. And so when somebody asks me to do less, I welcome that. And in the first draft of this film that I got from Potsy, the character spoke probably twice as much as he does. And Potsy and I started to collaborate and work on it, with him always having the last word, as he should.
Weeks going through everything and watching movies and reading books, and it was...
And it was all about taking away, and he doesn't need to say this. And when Potsy would agree, which he didn't always, we would, cut dialogue because this was clearly a character that he'd written for whom any exposure of self is perilous. And so we just decided, all right, our agenda is to make him say, or allow him to say, as little as possible. And it was a really wonderful process. And again, as I alluded to earlier, part of a relationship that developed between us that was quite special in terms of trusting one another. But it was, a lot of it was about taking stuff away and allowing moments to occur without dialogue.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here. Terrific film.
Appreciate it.